I'll call to order the Charter Township of Chesterfield regular township board meeting for Tuesday, March 28, 2023 at 7 p.m. to order. Could we all stand for the colors? Item 3, roll call. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott. Here. Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph. Here. Trustee Demink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg. Here. Clerk Berry is here.
Item 4, approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Trustee Demink, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry. Aye.
Presentations. Item 5, presentations are unscheduled tonight. Item 6, department reports. We'll start out with Trustee Demink.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. From Leisure Services, seasonal hiring, Chesterfield Parks and Rec Department is currently hiring for several seasonal positions. Positions are available for ages 16 and older. Seasonal jobs include summer camp, park staff, supervisory level positions. Visit the website, chesterfieldtownship.org, to apply online. Next, the summer registration is coming out soon. The summer season program will be published soon. The season spans from May to August of 2023. Summer camp registration will open Monday, April 10th. Registrations for all remaining programs will be open Wednesday, April 12th. Facility rentals, excuse me here a minute. Facilities are available to rent for several occasions: sports, games, baby showers, and graduation parties. Pollard Park, baseball fields, and soccer fields, seasonal. Brandenburg Park, pavilions and indoor party rooms, seasonal. And the community center, indoor party room, gym, and meeting space year-round. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Any further comments? Trustee Joseph.
Just a quick update from the library board. So our library meeting was 2 weeks or so ago, and we had the pleasure of meeting I had the pleasure of meeting the new library director. The meeting minutes were, the agenda was pretty chocked in terms of just laying out some of the ideas that the new library director has. There's some real interest in library outreach. Specifically, they would like to bring some of the services that you get in person out into the communities by way of a bookmobile. And some of the ideas that this individual has, our new director, really very, very good ideas. And of course, Mr. Supervisor, I extended again, as you have countless times in the past, an invitation to come before the board and update the entire board on what it is that the library anticipates doing in the future. So, of course, he's got some settling in to do, but indicated that he was more than interested, and I hope to see him in front of the board soon talking about some of the things that he would like to see with the Chesterfield Library. So, a lot of good ideas and a lot of optimism from that meeting with regard to our new director. So, hopefully we'll see him soon.
Thank you. Clerk Berry.
I have no report tonight, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other department reports, we'll go to item 7, the consent agenda.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 7A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of March 14th, 2023. 7B, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Motion to approve.
Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee Vosberg. Comments from the public?
John Speaka, Chesterfield Township. Couple quick questions regarding the bill run. Under the general administration, we've got a lobbying firm, Midwest Strategy Group, that we pay $4,000 a month that I was totally against when it came up for a vote. But just out of curiosity, I noticed that we've got our lobbying group. It's set on the bill run that we took. It was dinner with the Republican leader, Mr. Hall, for $194.15. So I'm just curious on what the extent of that dinner was with our lobbying group. And are we going to be taking both sides out the dinner? Because right now, the House, the Senate, and the governor controls all three branches of government. So just curious on that expense. And then under facilities and operations, we've got master maintenance, which is the new contractor for the township, at $47.30 per month just for the municipal building. But there were two charges. There was a February charge and a March charge. So what is the delay with the charges on the bill run? So they should coincide with the current month, or the at least 2 weeks following that we're in. So I noticed two charges on that, and then master maintenance for the DPW at $28.15. And under the building inspection, again, we're leasing 3 Ford Escapes at $1,432 on the taxpayer's dime, and that averages about $477 per car, and that's a lot of money just for one vehicle. And considering that it's only 10,000 miles per year. So if you can tell me, because I don't remember when it came up, when that contract expires with Enterprise. And for water and sewer, I mean, they were running 2 Ford Escapes at, $477. So for a Ford Escape, paying that kind of money is, it's a lot of money. So, yeah. But if you could comment on that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Clerk Berry?
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 8, there is a public hearing scheduled tonight. Item 8A.
Item 8A is to conduct a public hearing to review the special assessment roll and to hear any objections thereto for the proposed Hickock Gravel Road Maintenance Improvement Special Assessment District.
Do I have a motion to open the public hearing? Trustee Demink? Supported by Trustee Joseph. Mitch, do you want to come up and just kind of give a brief summary of what this is?
We need a roll call.
I'm sorry, my apologies. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
My apologies. Mitch, you want to give a quick summary on what this is?
Good evening. Hickock is a gravel road. The work would be done by the township. The work includes 4 grading applications, and on 2 of the grading applications, we're gonna bring in 21 AA stone. So that is the current work as prescribed in this special assessment.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the public?
Joe Kadich, I live on Sutton. I just wondered, a while back, you were selling the grader that we had. I don't think you got any money for it, but isn't what was used before this that you would grade these roads and charge the streets? And I don't know, how often do you do this a year? Twice a year? 3 times a year? And just wonder, looking back at it, should you have sold that grader? Or is this something that we could have handled in-house for a lot less money to the public?
Any further comments from the public?
Thank you.
Any further comments from the public in regards to the public hearing for Hickock Road?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by Clerk Barry to close the public hearing, supported by Trustee Vosberg. Clerk Barry?
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Public hearing is closed at 7:14. Item 9, the regular agenda. Item 9A.
Item 9A is to adopt resolution number 5, resolution 5, number 2023-14 for the Hickock Road Maintenance Improvements Special Assessment District, SAD, confirming the special assessment role and providing for collection in annual installments for a 5-year period.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Demink. Supported by Trustee Anderson. And I want to make a note for the board, there's a typo on the resolution. On, under item 2, paragraph 2, the percentage rate is 5%. Does the motion still exist? Yeah, yes, it's Trustee Joseph. Trustee Joseph or Anderson? Comments from the public? Seeing no comments from the public. Comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, just to address the speaker that came to the podium, as it relates to that grader, it was my understanding when we made the decision to sell that equipment, it had exhausted its useful life. That was not a piece of equipment that could have handled the gravel road maintenance improvement for this particular special assessment district. And it was my recollection, we talked about that grader and what it could have done as it relates to the county's grading and whether or not it could be used as a supplement to, some of the assistance that we get from the county for some of our gravel roads. It was my recollection, and anybody who's more knowledgeable on this, correct me if I'm wrong, but that grader had exhausted its useful life and was not something that we could have used for this project or any of the others. So that was the reason for selling it, and I don't see any remorse in that as it relates to this agenda item.
I agree with Trustee Joseph on that, Mr.
Trustee Demink.
Supervisor. Because the thing is, the repair bills for that thing, if I recall right, they were getting outrageous because of its age.
Yeah, just follow up on it, and it's very difficult to use, operate. We didn't have the operators trained in it. We are capable of managing this. We have alternate equipment that is underbelly scrapers, dump trucks that are capable of doing exactly this project. So much easier to use, much cheaper at our cost and expense. So really nothing other than addressing that question. There's nothing more to add to this. I have a motion by Trustee Demink, supported by Trustee Anderson, to approve item 9A. Clerk Barry.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 9B.
Item 9, Item 9B is to adopt proclamation number 2023-02 to recognize April 9th through the 15th, 2023 as National 9/11 Public Safety Telecommunicators Week.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve.
Second.
Clerk Barry will support. Comments from the board? Clerk Barry.
On behalf of the people of the Charter Township of Chesterfield, Macomb County, State of Michigan, and the Chesterfield Township Board of Trustees, do hereby proclaim April 9th through 15th, 2023 as National 9/11 Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. Whereas the President of the United States has historically acknowledged the second week of April as National 9/11 Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, and whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the Chesterfield Township Dispatch Center. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services, and are the vital link for our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them with information and ensuring their safety. And whereas the Chesterfield Department of Public Safety has recognized that their public safety telecommunicators have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients, as they are the backbone of the 911 system. And whereas the Chesterfield Township Department of Public Safety is committed to providing a high-quality emergency communication system to the residents of Chesterfield Township. Now therefore, the Chesterfield Township Board of Trustees do hereby proclaim April 9th through 15th, 2023 as National 9/11 Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Michigan.
Thank you, Clerk Barry. Any comments from the board? I have a couple of them, just being, spending a long history in public safety. This dispatcher's job, and I've always told the dispatchers that we have here, and anybody, it is the toughest job in public safety. You get the phone call, you get the stress, and you don't ever get to leave the building other than announce it over a radio and listen to a phone call, and that phone call subsequently hangs up, and you're left moving on to the next call. All of our 911 dispatchers, both here in Chesterfield and across the state, and in other agencies, and I think you've witnessed it on national events where they release the audio. The stress of the dispatchers sometimes can be overwhelming, and our dispatchers here in this township for Chesterfield and New Baltimore do an excellent job, and I appreciate this board taking this recognition, and I know that the dispatchers of public safety will do the same. So, any other comments? Did I miss anything? Any comments from the public?
Mike Rayner, 26175 Jack Grove, Chesterfield. I'd just like to mention that my grandson is an EMT. The 911 dispatchers, those are both very, very key positions, no question about it. I can't believe my grandson goes out there and saves lives every day for pennies. I'm not sure what we pay the 911 dispatchers, but I hope they're getting rewarded more for, the important service that they provide the township. I must say, part-time, low wages for so many of these important employees that we have in government, period, I think is a shame. I think it's embarrassing. I hope it changes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Clerk Barry, to approve item 9B as read. Clerk Barry?
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink?
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg?
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott?
Aye.
Item 9B, again, another proclamation, a second proclamation. Clerk Berry. I'm sorry, 9C.
It's okay. Item 9C is to adopt proclamation number 2023-03 to recognize March as Women's History Month. Do you want me to read it first, or do you want to? To recognize March as Women's History Month. Whereas the Charter Township of Chesterfield, Michigan recognizes the month of March as Women's History Month, established in 1987 by Congress to celebrate the contributions American women have made to strengthen and lead the nation since its inception. And whereas Women's History Month honors women of every race, status, ethnicity, who have challenged the social and legal structures that have kept women's labor underappreciated and underrepresented throughout. History to establish an equal role for women, ensuring the appreciation and value of equitable labor for future generations. And whereas American women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also at the forefront of every major progressive social change movement in history, paving the way for future generations to enjoy the unalienable rights, duties, and responsibilities afforded equally to all citizens of the United States of America. And whereas each woman is extraordinary in her own way, providing that women working inside the home or outside in academia, science, technology, business, labor, governance, and more maintain a critical role in every sphere of society. Now therefore, on this 28th day of March 2023, and on behalf of the Charter Township of Chesterfield, State of Michigan, the Township Board of Trustees does hereby proclaim the month of March as Women's History Month in Chesterfield Township.
Do I have a motion to approve the proclamation as presented? So moved. Trustee
Support.
Joseph, supported by Treasurer Elliott. Treasurer Elliott, do you want to address this?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Tonight, we've invited the women in business from the Anchor Bay Chamber to come and speak and have a few words. And if it's all right with you, Mr. Supervisor, let's invite them up.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Thomas, President of the Anchor Bay Chamber of Commerce, and I have here with me this evening several women from the Board of Directors here at the Chamber, and we are honored to be here to represent all of the Bay Area women in business and the members of the Anchor Bay Chamber. This goes really to all the women that are out there making a difference in the lives in their community, in the lives of the people that they represent, the nonprofit organizations, their families, in their neighborhoods, et cetera. So we're honored to be here for this, so thank you.
Lisa, if you hold up right there, we're going to present you with a little certificate and gift from the township. Treasurer Elliott.
Ms. Thomas, could you, before you get the presentation, could you introduce your executive board members and let us know who they are?
Of course, thank you. So I have here with me Monisha Riley. Monisha's one of our board members, and she's with Thrivent. And I have Jennifer Fleming. She's one of our board members, and she's with Advia Credit Union. And Wendy Downing, also one of our board members, and she is with Aflac and Medicare.
My apologies, I forgot to take a vote before we started the process. Clerk Barry, would you call a roll? I have motion by trustee Joseph, supported by treasurer Elliott.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Elliott, or Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson. Aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Thank you, Trustee Demink. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Thank you, ladies, appreciate it. Item 9D.
Item 9D is to approve a recommendation by Public Services to award engineering design services to Spalding DeDecker for the Jefferson Avenue Pathway Project in the amount of $116,332.95.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Trustee Vosberg, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Mr. O'Connor.
Good evening, Board. This project is designed, or proposed to be designed, to cover 3 different phases of construction, starting at the existing sidewalk pathway near Salt River and Jefferson. Then the green line would be the first phase to the township property on Jefferson, heading, I guess that's straight due west, and then heading northwest up the township property towards the school and then through the school to Sugar Bush. That would be the 3 phases. These projects are targeted for funding from SEMCOG or TAP grants. In order to get those grants, you do need shovel-ready projects. You do need bidding documents in order to get the grants. The grants have become very competitive. So if we award this project tonight, that'll give us the 3 shovel-ready projects to start submitting for grants for construction.
Questions from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, I like the idea of improving pathways, and certainly it's something that our residents talk a lot about. The concern that I have is we present this as the sort of prerequisite for being in a position to receive grants. You're looking at a very sizable investment, about over $100,000. And what if the grants don't come? Would we be prepared, and shouldn't we be prepared to say, independent of the grants, this is something that the township is committed to? The grants would only help us, in terms of financing the project, but we wouldn't spend $116,000 on a engineering design to just walk away from it if we didn't get the grants. I'm assuming the intent is, and then when you look at phase 1, 2, and 3, you're well over $1 million in completion costs, and that's estimated. We won't know until we get, hard engineering design data back. The proposed funding mechanism is COVID money, and what's concerning to me is we've had a lot of discussions about the money that we receive from the federal government coming to the township in the form of maybe a town hall or some type of special board meeting perhaps, where residents could weigh in on what to do with that money. And it seems that we have attached that money to a number of projects. Many of them are, very worthy projects, and I respect the vision of the individuals that brought it forward, but when do we get to the, public hearing? When do we get to the community? When do we get to the town hall to hear from our residents about, is this the pathway that we would look to connect? Or are there other areas in the township that are more vital? Maybe areas that are near schools, or maybe areas that we've heard from public safety that have high incidences of pedestrian accidents, those types of critical analysis for where do the pathways and the connectivity, we triage those. That seems to me to be the step that should happen before this step. So I was wondering if you could touch on that, if you can.
And I'm not familiar with what other communities are doing if they're having public hearings to discuss the ARPA funding. If you were asking us, public services to bring an agenda item for public discussion of ARPA funding, is that I guess I'm not fully understanding.
No, I don't want to settle that with,
Okay.
that with you. I'm just talking about in terms of the decision to use ARPA funding for this particular project. Where does that come? Is that a directive that you're given? So like we want to put in connectivity near this area, and so lay out as the engineer, lay out for us the procedure? Or do you have input? How do we decide that this is where we're dedicating ARPA monies in terms of the connectivity and pathways project? Like,
I can
is that
interrupt.
more for you, Mr. Supervisor?
That's correct. So
Okay.
the option to fund this is with ARPA. It's also with our capital funds. There are options across the board with this. Funding can be with just general fund money or within our capital improvement plan or with the ARPA funds. That's a discussion that we can continue to have and will have. It's listed in here just simply because that is an option, ARPA funding. Some of your other comments is where they specifically targeted. This is a plan, this plan was generated back for connectivity with other regional trails and other regional pathways. You specifically mentioned the school. This pathway here cuts right through the heart of Anchor Bay Middle School and then the Sugar Bush Community Center. The connectivity that it creates from Jefferson to Sugar Bush, and then the future plan for Sidewalk Gap is posted there, the picture on the side. It's just a smaller version of what you see on the screen. Those are all discussions yearly that we're going to have as regards to what areas are prioritized. This is really just a township initiative internally, and what best suits our connectivity to other regional paths and other communities, such as New Baltimore, the Jefferson Link, our parks, our pathways, and then back here to the township property. That's kind of the priority of how we scrutinize these and these projects, or this particular project, and what serves the best and what gets us the biggest impact right off the bat. I'll just quickly mention, we are constantly looking for alternative sources. So what we're asking for today is just simply an engineering to go out and get a complete package price on what this cost or what this connection would be, and again, bring it back to the board. The ultimate funding source rests with the board and however we see it. But please know that every expenditure along this, we're part of a SEMCOG group. This potentially could be funded from a TAP grant from SEMCOG, which we have had a good history of. We have 2 board members who are now in positions of leadership on that board, and I think can steer a lot of funds to this. We've been very successful. I think we'll continue to be very successful. But, and you're going to hear me say this in any discussion that we have, when we ask for money from outside sources, the first thing they come back to us is, what is your investment? Well, our investment is this $116,000 for the engineering portion of it and securing the right-of-ways for these pathways. So it's a big plan. It's a comprehensive plan that's always being evaluated before we even present it. This is just a small portion of it for this year.
So just a quick follow-up, Mr. Supervisor, because
Yes.
you touched on a couple of issues that I want to just make sure I'm clear on. We have a lot of ideas. We have a lot of plans. We have a number of projects that we would like to complete. But we don't have a lot of plans where we come in and we commit 6 figures to a design. And that's what we're being asked for here. Historically, and I think Trustee Anderson can support this statement, and we've had projects that are brought to the board on this is just the first step. We're not approving anything. And then there's support to investigate further, more detailed costs. And if at any point along the way there's well, that's just not the direction I think we need to go, and there's a no vote, at a subsequent step. Well, you voted for it before. So I'm trying to understand, when we commit $116,000 for the design, we do have a good track record with grants, and when we understand the grant application process, and in this case, I think we've done a little forward thinking, and we know that minus a formal sort of declaration of what we're prepared to do, in essence, you've already begun the grant application process. You're saying this is now, in your presentation, you said shovel ready. So now when we get the design service, we're to qualify for grants. We're a step closer to the grants. My first question is, minus the grants, is it, I hope, the intent to see the project through if you're going to commit $116,000? We're not going to commit $116,000 and say, well, if the grant doesn't come through, you know, it's over. I got to believe there's some intent to bring, obviously the board has to approve it, there's some intent to bring to the board, we're $116,000 in, you're 10% of the total construction costs in. So you're making a commitment. It's not just a feasibility like we have later on down in our agenda. This is a committed sort of first step. So is it our intent to go through, independent of grants, with some conviction to bring this project through? And then the second question is, what do we know in terms of deliberation? We're not going to be able to debate tonight. If I have an idea about where ARPA fund monies could go in connection with pathways, when do we have the discussion about how to do and utilize ARPA funds? When are we, or are we not? Because when we originally heard about the several $1 million, there was discussion about a town hall or a special board meeting to deliberate and discuss and hear input from the residents. That seems to have gone by the wayside, and now we're bringing projects forward with, this would be roughly 25% or better of the total ARPA grant or revenue that came from the feds. So there seems to have been a decision made that we're not going to have a town hall, or, I'm sorry, Trustee Vosberg? My understanding is that it was slightly over $4 million in ARPA money.
Yeah.
That $1.2 million would not be?
Well, I don't know where $1.2 million is coming from.
Well, it comes from Spalding to Decker that lists out the preliminary costs of all three phases. Is my math that far off?
If
Fi-
all
five-
of those phases are completed, yes,
Yeah.
but this is just the engineering portion. There's two questions that I want to answer to you right now.
Yeah.
Number one, yes, we're committed, or it wouldn't be on this agenda.
Right.
Number two, I don't have any plans to have a public hearing on how we spend ARPA. If you want to, and I've asked and sent emails to all board members.
Has that changed for you?
Please, if you want to hold a meeting, we can. That's separate. I didn't have a plan to do that because.
Mr. Supervisor,
ARPA
I'll stop my comments and just shut it down right now. I'll go back and find the board meeting where you said specifically to a presenter at the podium that your intention was to have a public hearing or a town hall.
Okay.
That's
I don't
just a
now.
fact.
I don't now.
Okay, that's fine.
So
And that's what I'm saying. If that's changed, that's
Yeah,
fine.
That's changed.
Okay.
And ARPA money is very restrictive on where you can and can't go with it. So we're very limited to entertain the public. Not that their input isn't important, but to entertain the public, there's very limited expenses that we can use that money for. So we are doing it in compliance with what those requirements are. If you want to have a public meeting to let the public in, I'm more than supportive of it, and I'll sit right next to you. Trustee Vosberg? Nothing? Mitch, anything more?
I would, we did meet with the representatives who processed the grants prior to bringing this to the agenda. And the project, we showed them the alignment and the scope of the job. And it's their recommendation to keep the construction cost right around $500,000 per project. So that's why it's split up into these three phases. And it was, not until you actually get the grant, you don't have the grant, but it was favorably received by the people who processed the grants, Macomb County people.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We're approving the 116,000, and so then when you said 25%, David, I think that's what we were like, wait, that's just 116,000. So I understand where you got the math from now. I do support this because this is a very popular plan that's been on before we even started talking about ARPA. This is going to take that pathway from New Baltimore, and I believe it's the Blue Water Path. It's something to do with the Blue Water path, and it'll come all the way from New Baltimore and down Jefferson, behind the schools there, and then come out on Sugarbush, and eventually the idea is to connect this connection to somehow go all the way from New Baltimore over to Gratiot. And that is the heart of it, and so that people who live, can go through there, and you can enjoy. You don't have to drive your bikes to go to someplace else to be able to ride. Now, personally, my family has to, get in the car. We have to take our bikes and go up to park at a different school and get on and do that. So this is a something within mind. With the residents in mind, and along the biggest ask that we have is for sidewalk connectivity, and this board has been very conscientious about that and continually trying to provide safe pathways. So I'm very much in support of this, having it shovel ready, and as Supervisor Kersten has spoken to, I'm on the executive committee, and I am constantly, we're constantly trying to find executive committee of SEMCOG, and we're trying to find ways to pay for all of the pathways and upgrade them and get them so that they are families can enjoy the beautiful Chesterfield Township area. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Comments from the public?
Joe Kadich, I live on Sutton. I, like Trustee Joseph, have been waiting for some kind of a meeting for the public as to how we were going to spend this $4.8 million. It was allocated, it's called the American whatever fund, ARPA funds, and we should be involved in where the money's going to be spent. We haven't been. The only thing we know about is when you decide to spend it, like when you decided to redo the launches at the park. The thing I read about it, mainly if you see what it's supposed to be on it, they suggest using it on public things that'll have a good return, like sewers, like water, that'll have long-lived uses and have a good return on the investment. I didn't say anything about sidewalks in it if you read the whole thing. Basically, I'd like to see you have a public meeting on where this money is spent or where it has been spent.
Mr.
Number
Skater, do you want to
two-
speak to the agenda item?
Pardon me?
Speak to the agenda item, not ARPA funds.
Part of it.
Well, it's not.
Part of it. It's what you're
Speak to
asking
the-
in here. You're
I'm gonna
asking
ask
for
you to speak to
use
the agenda
use the
item.
ARPA funds. So let's not go around the question. Let's address what's going on here. Number two, I don't remember what the plans were. I see what they are now. I have a problem with what Dan Accavetti put in from the bridge on the Salt River to Sutton. Basically, I was one of the people beating on the drum because people were coming across the bridge and walking on the shoulder next to Jefferson to get over across the bridge. He put in a sidewalk, 8-foot wide sidewalk, great. That's about a foot off the highway. Pay $300,000. They could have continued to use the shoulder and been just as safe and had the same thing. The design on it was terrible. I know you went and checked, said, well, it's safe. But the other thing that happened, when you did, they put the fence alongside of it, and if you try pulling out on Sutton, look north, you can't see the bridge. You pull out of Sutton, you're taking your life in your hands because there's not enough of a view to see those cars. You're 300 feet when you can see them over the bridge, and at 45 miles an hour, you better step on the gas to get around there without getting hit. So what I'm asking now is, in this design, is the rest of these things along Jefferson going to be 10 feet off the Jefferson? Or are we going to have the same situation where you're walking on the shoulder of Jefferson and spending money to do that? I think you should have a review of that design for people before you go ahead with it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If you could limit your comments just to this agenda item in regards to engineering for the design of Spalding to Decker for the Jefferson Avenue pathways.
John Speaka, Chesterfield Township. In regards to the $116,332.95, in regards to what Trustee Joseph was saying, I'm in total agreement. Basically, he wanted an assurance that, you know, if we get an approval tonight, which I know we're gonna, that we're not gonna just spend $116,000 without having a backup plan. So sidewalks are very popular in this township. It's what the residents want. I also agree with Trustee Joseph that we should have a meeting with the residents and get an opinion on, you know, elsewhere on where residents and pathways for connectivity are needed in the township. In response to the what the current supervisor responded as far as the general budget could not afford what this 1.2 million for the total project, so that would be completely out. But in regards to response, because the ARPA funds were brought up by Trustee Joseph, and there was a response by the current supervisor, the ARPA funds could be used for the sidewalks, but we should have a meeting with the public on where the ARPA funds are going to be used, because you know, there was a comment that was made that you were going to, Brad, have a sit-down or a town hall with the public on the ARPA funds. I haven't seen it transpire. I've been harping on it for a long time. I'd like to see a public meeting. And this is the residents' money, and I understand it's limited to where the funds could be spent, but let's get input from the residents on where they want their money spent. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Any comments from the board? Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, the ARPA, just for the speaker who started out with, what is it? It is the American Rescue Plan. American Rescue Plan has specific guidelines. One of them is increase communities' broadband or wireless internet capability. You could also use it for the pay of COVID-related first responders. Water and sewer is another huge. My point being, I don't think it would be difficult to educate the public in a presentation that says, here are the areas that we could spend ARPA money. What would you like? And then get feedback. It would be worthwhile. And I will make the recommendation to have that with you, Mr. Supervisor, because I would like to hear, you know, from the public. I realize that this is a nice project, and I'm not disputing the bike path and the ability for, you know, families to use this and bike. It's something that we hear over and over from our residents, that they would appreciate a more walkable and bikeable community. The question becomes, where is it best served? Where, you know, and that I think has to have some public deliberation. And I appreciate the grants, and that was the first question I asked, is the grant would be, you know, any grants that would help cover and defray the costs of this would be welcomed. But if the grants don't come through, I would assume 116,000 is an indication that we are going to look to find a way to fund this, whether it's general or otherwise. So you don't commit 116,000 to something that you say, well, we don't know if we'll get a grant, but we have a good shot at it. We're moving forward in a way that says this is a committed project. We're going to find a way, and I don't know who makes those decisions. You know, who makes those? If we're not hearing directly from the public by way of a town hall for the specifics of the ARPA, how do we make those decisions? We just do it a chunk of money at a time. So the 700K for the boat ramps, or in this case, if it were approved, and I realize that we're not approving anything but engineering fees here tonight, but you're according to according to Spalding de Decker, the preliminaries are actually 1.5 million when you look at not only the construction costs, but also the design fees for each phase, and then you have the geotechnical testing at another 12,500, and I'm sure we're going to have to bake in a 10 to 15% contingency fee. So, you know, you're upwards of $1,750,000 perhaps. So, again, I would like to have some feedback from the public, and I would like to hear other viable bike paths, sidewalks. Connectivity is clearly a big issue for our residents, but where is another question. So I am going to take you up on that, Mr. Supervisor, and let's, hopefully we get more than a handful of people, you know, come to the meeting and express their ideas, and we can have a good turnout and hear from other residents. But I would like to see that before we commit monies upwards of $1.5 million. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? I have a motion by trustee Vosberg, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve item 9D. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No?
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry. Aye.
Item 9E.
Item 9E is to approve a recommendation by Public Services to partner with Macomb County Department of Roads 2023 Limestone Program to improve approximately 3 miles of gravel road within the township. Township 10% match in the amount of $29,295.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion
moved.
to approve.
Clerk Berry will make the motion, supported by trustee Domingue. Mr. O'Connor, you want to address this real quick?
This is the annual program that Macomb County Department of Roads does with the communities in this area to maintain existing gravel roads that are county-owned and operated. Historically, we do 3 miles of gravel road in Chesterfield Township. That's what we're proposing here. And the township does match 10% of the work. The county pays for 90%. We throw a 10% match in.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Questions from the board? Comments from the public? Any comments from the public? I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by trustee Demink, to approve item 9E. Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Demink. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Vosberg. Aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 9F.
Item 9F is to approve a recommendation by Public Services to award engineering services to Hubble, Roth, and Clark in the amount of $11,400 for a water storage feasibility study.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. With support.
Second.
Supported by Clerk Berry. Mr. O'Connor?
Excuse me. Annually, Great Lakes Water Authority raises the water and sewer rates to the township. A portion of that rate increase is dependent on our max hour, our peak hour and our max day demand. We have never done a formal study on a water storage tank to see if it makes sense fiscally to construct one, to see if we can reduce our peak hour and max day, to see if there's a benefit to the township. Other communities have recently constructed these. This would be a healthy exercise for the township to answer that question.
So I'm going to follow up with what Mitch said, and just in learning about the water system here and how it works through Great Lakes and through the Mid, and as Mitch said, through other communities. I think that we would be remiss if we didn't at least look at where this potential water reservoir could take us and how it would and could or not impact our water rates. And as Mitch said, there are other surrounding communities that I've spoken with, that I've talked to, that have invested in this type of system. I don't know honestly if this is good for us now. It may be in the future, but the plan here is to get an expert in, evaluate our system, evaluate our current fees, our future fees, and see if it's practical and if there is any savings long term. As we all know, Rates are going up through Great Lakes, and I think just to put us on a platform in the future of understanding what our rates look like, this is a step in that direction. Any questions from the board? Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, I just wonder, back in 2015, I think AEW did some type of study there, and I just wondered, did you take a look at that, or your opinion on that? Thank you.
We were unable to locate the 2015 study. We saw it referenced in water rate increase or water rate studies by Stantec, and I think AEW did one, and they referred to a storage tank as a possible way to save money, but we were unable to locate a specific water storage feasibility study.
I just wonder because a nice hunk of cash changed hands back then, and I wonder, I see where they bid on it, and so back in 15, the township paid for a study, whatever it included, and that's in the utopia, wherever it is, the happy hunting ground of studies, whatever.
And there was a rate study. I believe there were 2 rate studies done, one by Stantec and one by AEW. There might have been 3 done. And they all refer to a water storage tank as a possible way to reduce, max day and peak hour. But those weren't specific water storage studies to see what the return on investment was. A water storage tank will reduce your max day and your peak hour. The question is how much, and how much can you save, and how long will it take to pay off that water tank?
And my last concept, I know they even, there was something about altitudes within the township that'd be appropriate for these tanks or a tank back then. So, okay, thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Mitch, I can assure you, we had a water rate work group for Clerk Berry. I believe you were on that. And we most certainly looked at feasibility of a tower, and AEW was asked to provide the understanding that I have from that 2015 exercise was the water tower allows you to fill your tower off-peak when the rates are lower so that you would use the stored water during peak hours, and the several communities race to build water towers only to have Great Lakes Water Authority, or back then it was the Detroit Water and Sewage Department, change the rate structure so that they have, in essence, the way it came back was they have a monthly or an expense, annual expense, and they'll structure the rate to get the annual expense. So if they're using an off-peak or a peak schedule and communities find a way around that, they'll just simply change the rate structure because they're going to get their annual revenue however they need to adjust the rates to do that. And the representatives from Macomb County and Oakland County and others were helpless because the voting power rested with Wayne County got a representative, the city of Detroit got a representative, so there really was no way to control the structure of that. And I'm wondering why in the request for proposal AEW doesn't reference their own study. Like, I don't know why we can't find it, but why doesn't the provider give us some indication of what their assessment of it was back in 2015. I realize things changed, but to Trustee Anderson's point, the elevation in the township hasn't changed. So, looking at water pressures and consideration of the towers and so those numbers and those analytic variables haven't changed. Why wouldn't we have AEW include that? Their response to our request for proposal provides almost no detail, and it simply says a fee for professional services, water storage feasibility study, lump sum $45,000. They've been our engineer, sole engineer for many, many years. Why wouldn't they? And did we ask, can you provide us with your work that we paid for in 2015?
We did ask. And again, we could only find references to a study, but not, and it was all included in the rate study. It was not a specific water storage study. And I do want to comment, you're right, GLEWA has changed the methodology on how they charge rates. It has gone more to a monthly fixed charge, less on peak hour and max day. So even if we had the study for 2015, it wouldn't necessarily tie into the current way that GLEWA does the rate structure. And again, this study may lead that it doesn't make sense to build a storage tank, but I think we're responsible to get that answer before we start talking about a rate
Just a
increase.
quick follow-up for you, Mitch. Do you think that it might be better, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but the concept of a water study is not a difficult one in terms of what we know, what information is readily available to us right now. Couldn't we get a better sort of assessment internally before we spend $11,000, simply to say, well, we've looked at it? Because my gut and spending several hours, in this room talking about water rates and, 1,000 square feet of water and however they construct, it was a tremendous amount of data that our committee went through. And part of, if you're saying that the water tower specifically wasn't done the way this is being proposed and it was referenced, it was certainly enough of a reference for us back then to say it was futile. There was no ROI on building at that point a $3.5 million facility, only to have Great Lakes change the structure. So now we have a storage facility, but no real benefit in terms of impacting the residents' water rates, except now they have a $3.5 million expense. I'm saying to you, don't we have enough collective sort of resources to get a good idea on whether or not a water tower is in our best interest, short of a feasibility study? Because we do a lot of studies, and it doesn't surprise me that several years later we can't even find what we studied. I think we know. I think we could know, and we would have at least a good idea to maybe even form a committee here and take a look at. I just don't see 11,000 to bring in somebody else to tell us what I believe we already know, and that is 3.5, 4 million, whatever the cost is now, is not going to return any kind of investment for you, for decades. Couldn't we do that internally and you get a good read?
If I thought we couldn't do it internally, we would have done it internally. HRC is experts, OHM is experts, AEW are experts. If we want an answer that we can stand behind, and I think we should bring the horses for the courses in to do this study.
I appreciate your assessment. I think there are some things that are just self-evident. We can bring in feasibility study and get experts to tell us why water is wet, and they are the experts, and we would know that it is indeed wet, but it is self-evident, and I think that's where I'm leaning, and I respect your difference that there is more to this, and we should get the experts, but I think the conclusion, and I think if you're honest, I think you know the conclusion. When we complete this study, we're going to say the same thing we said before we spent 11,000, and that is hell no, it doesn't make sense. But okay. Thank you.
Any further comments? Any questions from the public?
Again, I agree with Trustee Joseph. We went through this once, and I don't know why we can't find that study. It's worth going through again. I don't know it's worth paying $11,000 for. And knowing somebody else that was on that study is Paul Lafata, who probably says everything in the world that he's ever had his hands on. I'll talk to him and see if he's still got it. But essentially, to redo it in-house isn't a lot. They're not going to design a water tower or what goes through it. What they're going to look at is the numbers. How much do we use? How many days do we have to store? And if we get it at a certain price and we distribute it every other day at that price, how much are we going to save? That's a math problem. It's not an engineering problem. Just my opinion. You could do it in-house. And I'd like to remind Mitch, one of the parameters, basically it was our committee that recommended that we hire a civil engineer, and it was positioned on a thing that essentially he would pay for himself in a half a year, make his own pay. I don't think that has changed, and it's not a big deal. So I think basically we should look at, let's do it in-house. Either bring somebody in that's willing to work on it, or let Mitch work on it. But it isn't a big deal. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve item 9F. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 10, addendums. There are no addendums. Item 11, public comments. If you would please state your name for the record in the public comment section. Time limit is 5 minutes. The clock will start when you begin to speak. And again, if you would state your name for the clerk's records.
My name's Charles Cornman, 31179 Tiger Drive. And I'm here tonight to talk about building permits, or maybe it should be replacement permits. Recently, back in September, I had 3 windows in my house that were defective. The seals broke, it was leaking. It happened to be the room where 2 of my grandchildren, call it the playroom, which is really a bedroom. We made it into a playroom. And it got so cold during the wintertime, they couldn't play in there. So I had a company come out, very reputable, Hanson's, and they looked at it and said, I signed a contract with them to replace those 3 windows. Well, they couldn't get there till December because supply chain issues and whatever. When they showed up, they handed me a building permit to sign. And I said, what is this? I'm replacing 3 windows. They said, no, Chesterfield makes you pay for a building permit, $132.50. So I called the building department and I said, what's going on? Why am I paying? And the lady said, we do this because it's for your best interest, so that you don't get a fly-by-night company. I said, well, I got Hanson's. And said, it doesn't matter, you got to pay it. So I paid it. They put the windows in. I waited a little while. I called and said, has the building permit been closed? The lady told me yes. I said, well, I'd like a refund. And she said, why? And I said, well, I'm retired. I'm home in the wintertime 90% of the time, and I have windows front and back of my house that are on 24 hours. And no building inspector ever showed up. Said, well, yeah. Then she gave me the boss or somebody and said, talk to him. So we argued about it, and he says, I said, if you would have showed up, these windows are high enough that you would have had to have a ladder to even inspect to see if they were good. And he said, we don't get on ladders. I said, how do you inspect something like that then? Oh, we don't inspect it, we just sign it off on it. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. You just signed off on it without even inspecting it? It did not increase the price of my house. It was a replacement. And I'm sure when the house was built, they had to have a permit to put windows in, so you you've collected twice now on it. I don't think that's fair at all. It sounds to me like it's just nothing but a money grab. I could see if we were going to build a deck, which I have one already anyways, but a patio, another bathroom, I can see a building permit. But to replace something that's defective, that's not fair. The price of my house didn't go up because of it. So I'm here again tonight saying, I think should get a refund on it. But I'll even give $10 back, the administrative fee. But I think that I should get my money back. And there's probably a lot of other people in this city that would say the same thing. I don't know if you've ever heard this before. But you should be hearing it, because anything they do now, you got to have a building permit. And I don't know how that got passed. I don't know if it was a vote on a ballot. I don't know if the board got together and just said, we need to raise more money, so we're going to start charging for replacements. I'm not sure how it even got on. But what happens if now next year my front door gets a crack in it? I can't fix that. I have somebody come out to fix that, $132.50. 3 months later, my door wall cracks or something. I can't fix that. Get somebody, $132.50. When something else happens, $132.50, I could be paying thousands of dollars and still pay the city another $400 for these permits. I don't think that's right at all, and I don't know if other citizens have committed complaint about it. The city is building so much around here. They're going to be making a lot of money off these building permits from the builders. Why are they after the regular residents? I'm a retiree on a fixed income. And I pay $6,000 in taxes now a year to this city. And I don't think it's fair at all.
We'll get your name. We'll get your name before we leave here tonight. We'll look into it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Supervisor, could we get his name? I didn't hear it.
I didn't hear it and I missed it.
Sir,
so-
sir, could you restate your name?
Charles, C-H-A-R-L-E-S, Corman, C-O-R-N-M-A-N.
Thank you, Mr. Corman.
Any more comments from the public?
Joe Kadich, I live on Sutton. Couple things. First of all, I walked through the park to see what was going on with the boat launches, and I talked to some of the workers there and asked them if there were any changes to the engineering on the docks to allow for the fact that, you know, the water is probably, even though it's down 3 feet now, it's probably at a normal level, and it's going to be continuing to drop probably another 10 years, 12 years, be at the lowest again. And when that happened the last time, there were days, weeks, you couldn't launch boats there because of the water. The docks themselves or the ramps themselves didn't go out far enough to reach the low water at that time that the boats could get through. But the only thing they were able to launch was ski-doos. So I got a suggestion, even though you're working on it, and may pay at this time being you're paying $750,000 to have this done, to have somebody look at it to see what it would take to make sure that when the water level drops, and it will drop again, it does, it's on a 30-year cycle, that you're still able to launch boats for a couple years when it's at the low level. It wouldn't take very much engineering or to look at it and tell you what you have to do to keep that going. The other thing, I was waiting to hear somebody say something about the fact that fortunately we didn't get the F-35s here, even though everybody was looking for it and advocating for it. I'm glad it didn't happen, mainly because it wasn't in our national security interest to do it. It was basically to train foreign soldiers, foreign pilots, how to fly those planes. And we'd receive all the benefits like the air quality, water quality, and everything else. But it's done. We made it through there. But what I'm looking for now is when this all started, before it started, I think Trustee Vosberg was given the assignment to work with the SEMCOG on the PFAS mainly coming out of Suffrage. And I think you went to, 2 meetings? I talked to you afterwards, and you kind of said, well, I don't go to those anymore. But after all of this, one of the problems we still are left with is Selfridge still has PFAS problems. The last I saw, and I talked to the people from Eagle, is there's a ton of dirt in the back of that runway, along that runway, that they were either going to bury the PFAS or they were going to dig it up and replace it and take the dirt with the PFAS someplace else. But anyway, it's hanging out there. We don't know what's going on with it. And we had a chance at that point, working with SEMCOG, to bring this out to a head, make sure that SEMCOG was after them, because whatever happens to it, they're responsible for what's happened to that lake. About half the fish in that lake, or more than half now, have PFAS in them. And if you look at that, you just wonder, well, if the fish can get PFAS, you know damn well that the people are getting PFAS from the water that they're drinking, which is pumped out of the Detroit River. So with that, if I guess nobody here wants to join in and work with SEMCOG and bring them aware, because I think it's going to come to a head somewhere in the future that people in Detroit or the surrounding communities are getting contaminated with the PFAS. Might as well do it now. So if Trustee Vosberg didn't want to do it, I'll put my name out there. You don't have to pay me or anything. I'll work as a volunteer. But I think it's going to be a big issue, and you should probably become a part of it. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any further comments from the public?
Mike Grainer, 26175 Jack Grove Lane. Well, we spent an hour and 20 minutes talking about things. Well, I'm a people person. I like to talk a little bit about people. People that we need to fill jobs in the many businesses that we have. And actually, I think what would be helpful to try to take care of that need, we have people looking for jobs, and just as importantly, well, I don't think quite as importantly, we have businesses looking for employees. So I would like to ask the board to put together a letter addressed to the businesses in the township, and just as importantly, I would begin with the employment agencies that provide help here. I've talked to them, and boy, they jump all over me, because the main issue is we don't have any transportation on 23 Mile Road, so, you know, right away I got 80 or 90 people I could hire, but no bus service, because, you know, we have those part-time jobs that pay, you know, $12, $13, $14 an hour. And so obviously those folks take the buses, and you know how I am about buses. And we know that, well, New Baltimore, they kind of don't want that, you know, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to help our businesses by providing employees for them. And we need to be able to fill those positions by providing transportation so that they can get there. Because we know they don't arrive in their SUV, you know, they come by bus. The other thing that kind of ties in with the businesses at the same time is something that came up. It's the appearance of Chesterfield. And I kind of chuckle now when they talked about, you know, my bus shelters and how trashy they looked or whatever. And as I got into all of that, I found out that actually it was the surrounding areas that were trashy. I was cleaning those up as I went. So I would like to suggest that in that letter, please, that we also mention the ordinance that requires businesses that have frontage on like 23 and Gratiot are required to clean that area as if it's their own. So that is required. You know, the thing is from 61 feet from the middle of the road, blah, blah, blah. Basically, it's from the sidewalk. You know, the sidewalk is kind of the boundary. So anyway, I'd like to clean up the area. I'd like to provide jobs because as far as I'm concerned, what matters here is people. And I know money is certainly important, but every time I'm able to come, I just talk and just listen about all the things that we need. And of course, this is a me society today, and it's all about what I need. But I think it should be more about what the people really need. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
John Speaker, Chesterfield Township. I'd like to start off with, I'd like to welcome Clerk Berry back from her 2-month vacation. I almost didn't recognize you when I walked in today, but welcome back. And Ms. Vosberg, my wife was concerned about you at the last meeting, so I told her, I said, she's probably on vacation because I know you have family in Texas, but welcome back. It's good to see you. I'd like to start off the discussion with, I know we did a proclamation. We recognized March as Women's History Month, and that's very important. But for next year, I'd like to see it at the beginning of March and at the end of March going into April. So if we can make a note of that, I would appreciate it. In regards to rates, water rates are definitely going to go up in this township. There's no question about that. Between what Great Lakes Water is going to pass on to the township and the $13 million bond that was issued for that sewer line on the north end and the Demink pump station. And I still don't understand, I haven't heard, we received $4 million from, on federal money from Mrs. McLean. So I don't understand what we're going to do with that $4 million. Are we going to take it out of the bond, or are we moving forward with it? In regards to the gentleman that came to the podium on the building permits, you know, the township is operating at a $3.5 million budget deficit. So every dollar that they can collect is every dollar we're going to need. And those aren't my figures. You can reference what I'm telling you. You can go to the township website and you can pull up the budget, and the figures are there. People lie, figures don't lie. So despite what you're going to hear tonight, which is a rebuttal with no facts on what I'm telling you at this podium, that's what we're operating. And it's, if you look at the budget, it gets worse next year. My biggest concern is when you look at that budget, you know, is our police budget, because public safety to me is top priority. And when I look at those figures, I'm concerned on the budget, but we'll deal with that next year. As far as the ARPA money is the residents' money. The current supervisor and I have gone head-to-head on this. This is the residents' money. In my opinion, I mean, he comes off that, you know, he thinks that it's his money and he can spend it the way he wants, and I think that was displayed tonight. Basically, we were going to have a meeting, then he changed his mind, but he never informed anybody that there was a change of plans. And, you know, the money can only be used for so many things. We get that. But as Trustee Joseph said, it's important to get public feedback, because not only, you know, is Brandenburg's boat launch, because we're going to have the boat and fishing show here this year, but there's, you know, other priorities. For example, like the internet and, you know, sewer lines and water lines in the township that need replacement. So there's plenty of things that need to be replaced in the township, and we should get the residents' input. And not only that, but we should get the residents' input on where the sidewalks are going to go. We've got 3 middle schools down Hickey Road with no, a very small portion of that with sidewalks. There's sidewalks needed. I see kids every day walking up and down that street and riding their bikes. And I see vehicles going 55 plus every day. And I've asked, numerous times for a squad car down that street, because my concern, again, is the safety of our kids. So we need sidewalks, and there are different areas of the township that we need it. That is one area that we need it. We have multiple schools in that area. So I've got kids walking up and down that area all the time. So again, we need to look at the ARPA funds to answer. Mitch was hired, for engineering, but my understanding is he's in charge of DPW, and to give him the benefit of the doubt, he's pulled in multiple directions, so he could only do so much. I get that. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
Hello, my name is Janice Young. I live on Yorkshire. I just want to start off by saying public speaking terrifies me, so it takes a lot for me to get up here to voice my opinion on anything, but I do want to say the ARPA money isn't of interest to me, and I know Supervisor Kersten, you have expressed that there's certain things that it can be used for and restrictions on it. I would urge you to do a town hall and let people know what it can be used for, and let's see what the options are. And let us maybe have some input as to where the money gets spent. So that's it. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Bring it up to the board. Trustee Joseph, you want to start out tonight?
I'd like to start with the last comment. Ms. Young, I know it does take a lot to get up and say, and you handled that well. So thank you for coming and sharing with us your thoughts. Some of the other comments, there were a couple of references to the boat docks and a reference to the boat and fishing show. I think perhaps you were talking about the Bassmasters tournament that we are anticipating having national exposure. It's not the first time that I had heard the sentiment of, are we putting a lot of resources into something so that we can project an image? And I know Trustee Anderson was fielding comments after the last board meeting from a resident. And I remembered in 2005, I worked in the city of Detroit. And for football fans, you recall the Super Bowl came to Ford Field in 2006. There was a tremendous outlay of financial, just an infusion of cash that I had never seen in terms of the appearance. So anything on the 94 and 96 corridor, which was my commute to work every day, I started noticing, one, the homeless had been moved out somewhere. I don't know what happened. They got homes, but they were no longer there. And then I saw landscaping that came in, and I realized what was going on, and that is the image of the city was being spruced up to entertain a national, maybe a worldwide audience by, you looked at anything that went from Metro Airport into the city, and you saw a much different presentation. It wasn't an accidental, and I did notice after the Super Bowl, a lot of those beautiful flowers and things, they stopped being weeded and tended to. There was no additional mulch that came in. There was no watering. So I understand when people say, are we simply putting on a good face for the national exposure that we anticipate? And I hope we're not. And I know that there are a number of interested individuals who are asking questions about, are we just sort of short-sightedly putting all of our eggs into a image? And we definitely don't want to do that. We're hopeful that we can put things into a long-term enhancement of the lives of our residents and business owners. So we'll stay on that. Mr. Kornman, I'm very grateful that you came forward. There have been a number of issues over the years where I've been very concerned about permits and the need for permits, and I'm told the same thing that you were told, and that is it's really for the resident safety. So I understand that maybe when you're talking about a contractor putting in a furnace, a situation where unwired or improper gas hookup could have a devastating effect. But those always involve a building inspector trained in electrical and gas and so forth to go out and make sure that those contact points are solid. I don't understand 3 windows being replaced. I don't understand why you were told it was for your safety, yet nobody came out to your house to make sure that those windows were installed properly and wouldn't slam shut on your grandchildren or any other, hazard that may befall your family, but for that $152. It is, I think, appropriately referred to by you as a money grab. It really is something that I've been very upset about, and I wonder where the interest in public safety ends and the interest in taxation begins. I've dealt with it in my own neighborhood, residents who build a fence and then are now, unfortunately, they didn't do it by the proper way, so they're on their way to court. The township will dedicate resources to bring them to justice. So had you not brought your windows properly permitted, you could be targeted as a, I don't know, public enemy. We're gonna take you to court and enforce that, and failure to follow the court order could further you more penalties. So I was glad to hear the supervisor say, I'm going to look at your case specifically, because I think you are entitled to a refund if no building inspector came out to your house. I'd like to know what you paid for. And I appreciated your insight and willingness to pay the administrative fee, even though you shouldn't be paying that either. But we'll see how it turns out, and I'll be in contact with you as well. I'd like to see those windows and see what we inspected, and if you'd invite me out, I'll gladly come out to your house and check that out. Mr. Kadich talked about the PFAS. It's something that I've talked about, and it's a dangerous thing to talk about because there's not a lot of interest in talking about that, and if you do it in the context of the F-35, you could be labeled, anti-American, perhaps Al-Qaeda sympathizer, who knows, but you will be discredited and you will be targeted. I know that I felt it personally. It's a difficult thing, and I'm glad that you continue to talk about it, because I do believe that some of the PFAS-related cancer clusters that have been experienced in other areas, even in this state, the concentration of the PFAS was such that the communities that were reliant on groundwater or well water instantly saw huge upticks in devastating cancers. And in this particular instance, we have a very big body of water, and I don't think the impact of the potential carcinogens in that waterway will be realized for some time. So the politicians that are here now will have exceeded their terms and be retired and way away from the impact of what potentially could be there, and it really is quite scary. And I don't want to be associated with being on a leadership capacity for a community and just going along with it, and then finding out later in my hopefully golden years that I was neglectful to the people that I took an oath to serve, because they're devastated. So Mr. Raymer talked about being here and listening to things, debate about things. I understood the spirit of his comment, and I understand why he makes the distinction between people and things. Before I comment fully, I will just say to you that the things that we were talking about dramatically affect people. And I realize that it seems like it's a financial and therefore somewhat cold and maybe distant, but it is very much impacting people. And when you suggest to the board maybe sending letters out to businesses and so forth, I would encourage you in your travels to maybe make a connection tonight with the lady that's 2 rows behind you, because the chamber groups that we have in this area do a tremendous job of trying to help local businesses thrive. This township does not have a a full-time economic development team. I know it's something Supervisor Kersten and I have talked about, and I know that's on his, sort of vision board, if you will. Right now, we don't, but what we do have is an excellent relationship with the Chamber, and I'm sure they would like to have any insight that you have with regard to helping businesses get more quality employees and the beautification of their work business areas and so forth. So please make a connection with Ms. Thomas, who's right behind you, and I'm sure her team would be interested in trying to help you facilitate some of the ideas that you're talking about. But in the spirit of people, I'd like to close by saying thank you to the Supervisor's Office, because we have something that came out as a suggestion at one of the board meetings that actually just materialized almost instantly after the comments, and that was the acknowledgement of our people that work here in the township. When somebody is promoted in the police department or the fire department and they receive an additional rank, we have a ceremony. There's badges, and significant others who are important to them pin the badge on. But what about the other people in other departments? And so oftentimes the board isn't aware that we have new hires or people that have received promotions. And so the Supervisor's Office has now made it a point to send out monthly notices involving promotions. And so I won't go into each individual case and where they promoted or were hired from, but I would like to acknowledge publicly Christopher Heath, Tatum Hilliker, Christina Wilson, Kathleen Napolitano, Nicole Thomas, Carrie Whitfield, Elizabeth DeMaria, and Kristen Sparger, who were all notified. The board was notified of their promotions or new hires. Some of these individuals have been longtime servants of the township and have gone into another department to help out there and sort of expand their knowledge base, but these are all dedicated civil servants, and I am publicly saying to them, thank you for your service to our community, and thank you to the Supervisor's Office for bringing it to the board to make sure that the board is aware of these wonderful employees who do a great job. Keeping in line with the employees, Mr. Supervisor, 2 weeks ago I spoke about some concerns that I had about our first responders and mental health, and it's a difficult situation. Human resources is a very difficult situation, and I'm hesitant to talk at great length about that because I believe we have some competent people that are looking into these things. But I would like the opportunity, because I am mindful of proper communication and how we communicate from the board table to the department heads, and I don't want to cross any boundaries. I respect trying to engage, say, Mr. Duchesne about a particular situation and then being aware that, HIPAA and privacy issues and confidentiality issues could prevent any real exchange of dialogue on those. So one of the things that could be done, and I'm asking that it be done, is issues involving personnel and staff come to the board in a closed session. It is fully appropriate for the board in closed session to hear about any issues that might involve, significant discipline, termination, those things, especially when we're talking about first responders. So I see our attorney shaking his head no, but we've certainly had discussions in the past about contracts and issues involving personnel. But I am deeply concerned about our human resources and how we're interacting with our staff. And if there's another way, Mr. Siebert, please tell me. But I really am. I recognize the supervisor handles the executive branch and sort of deals with day-to-day operations, but I don't know the mechanism for being able to weigh in on our most important resource, and that is our human resource and how that goes. So if there's a better way, I'd like to know. I'll certainly reach out to you privately and understand that process better, but I'm deeply concerned about that. And it is our people. It is our people here that make the operation work. It is the most important resource, our human resource, And so I would be remiss if I didn't speak to that, and as a leader in this community, make sure that we're taking care of those people properly. Thank you.
Trustee Anderson?
Okay, I can't embellish on your comments, Mr. Joseph. Thank you very much. I have no further comments. Take care.
Trustee Demink?
Happy, excuse me, happy Easter to everyone, and happy first birthday to my granddaughter, Scotland.
Trustee Vosberg?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Earlier tonight, we recognized 911 operators and those who who deal with the first responders system. And one of the groups that, in addition to the ones you've described very adequately and appreciatively, Mr. Supervisor, we'd like to also appreciate those who make sure the system keeps working, because there's the technicians that keep it working, the people who actually design the systems, install them. It's all part of that process, and without all of those people from all of those various occupations, we would not have the public safety system that we have now, and I'm very appreciative of that. There were two comments earlier this evening that just are totally false, and my name was used in that, and I just want that known. That's not true. Thank you.
Treasurer Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I wanted to acknowledge the comments that were made using Trustee Vosberg's name. First of all, PFAS, she wasn't assigned to a PFAS group or anything like that. The PFAS issues that exist in the state of Michigan are handled through the DNR and at michigan.gov/PFAS response/fish and wildlife. It's a bigger issue than this board, and it is one that was, as a member of SEMCOG's executive committee, it is one that we had sent off to through the legislative work group, telling the state of Michigan that this is a concern for the local communities. That SEMCOG doesn't have the ability, and it is part of their bigger picture, but it isn't something that they dig into as deeply as, say, the DNR does. And I know that the Public Works Commissioner's office is also very much working on that. I know that Senator Peters' office is very active in that, and Governor Whitmer is very active in that. So I think the comments continually attacking Trustee Vosberg are misplaced. Also, in regards to Trustee Vosberg, Mr. Speaker, whether it's Trustee Vosberg's family that you've talked about, I don't know if you follow people or you stalk them or what have you, but I've heard you make pointed comments about people's family, where their grandchildren are. I know that you and one other of your friends have followed me. I know that you've made comments about me having lunch with my grandchildren. You've made comments about other board members and their family, their kids, their grandchildren. Stick to the politics, and that is inappropriate. It's just inappropriate and it's unacceptable, and I don't understand how that helps you. I think it's terrible that you do that, and it's inappropriate. Also, another comment that was made was about Hickey Road, and interesting story. This one, believe it or not, actually did involve Trustee Vosberg and also Supervisor Kersten when he was Public Safety Director. And it was actually interesting, the Safe Streets to School program, and that's what you're gonna look into it. And I've mentioned that several times here. And it was, if I remember, Trustee Vosberg and Supervisor Kersten worked to try to get Safe Streets to School from along Hickey Road specifically. And it was people in Mr. Speaka's neighborhood who were very much behind that. And I believe, if I'm correct, that was held up by a lack of response by L'Anse Creuse Public Schools. Now, if you're interested in reviving that, I would go to the L'Anse Creuse Public Schools School Board meeting and then ask them to re-engage the Safe Streets to School, and I'll be happy to pick that back up and work with Eric Edoff and the other L'Anse Creuse board members on that project. But I do want to thank Trustee Vosberg and Supervisor Kersten for their previous work in trying to get that done. The boat dock launches, I am supporting that, and I will continue to support that for this reason. I have sat at Brandenburg Park numerous times. I have neighbors who have destroyed their boats on those launches. I have many people, many residents whose boats have been destroyed on the launches as they're bringing them up. And you can sit there and you can watch them and you can just hear the boats scraping the bottom because they weren't working well. That is a benefit to the residents here for a long time. And I think that that's a good move, and I'm excited to see that project finished. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Barry.
I have no comment.
I'll just make some quick ones. Some of them were already covered. In regards to Brandenburg Park and the end of the boat launch, the lake belongs to the state of Michigan. They've made it very clear that any dredging goes through them, and it's not even within our wheelhouse to even ask for it to be done. That is their lake, their property, and dredging is just not an option at the end of the boat ramps. Sidewalks will continue to be a priority here in the discussion. I appreciate Treasurer Elliott bringing it up. We have lobbied and asked that Safe Routes to School, which funds pathways and sidewalks around schools in the township, be removed from the school's responsibility and place it into the township's responsibility and oversight. Right now, it's a multi-layered plan. You have school districts, you have road commission, and unfortunately, our community and any other community, we're very low on the process. So we really don't have much to say when it comes to Safe Routes to School and the money that is available there. We have asked that that be reviewed at state level and try and bring something back to the township. That is a substantial funding mechanism for sidewalks, particularly around and to and from schools. Again, I'll follow up some statements that were made by just a person that goes to the podium to just spread disinformation. Again, the CNN of our podium. Bonds have not been sold yet. The projection right now is that it won't be discussed until, or brought to the board until after our audit is done with the auditors, which will take place in July in an audit report. The $4 million received from Lisa McLean's office as directed funding for community service will be used and utilized at the DeMink pump station, which is was intended for. And it will offset that original request for funding and plan, which was just over $5 million. The township still has the obligation for the remaining balance. Again, budget deficit is a disinformation, misinformation. And I will reassure everyone, our public safety budget is stable, fine, and there's no reason to be concerned. The purchase of Brandenburg Park in negotiations with the state DNR has been approved. I will refer purchase documents to Attorney Siebert to complete the sale, hopefully within the next 2 weeks. We're simply waiting for notification from the DNR on the sale documents. We have several requests for community-directed spending that we have worked with our lobbyist group on, and they have to date served us fairly well. And they have opened a lot of doors for us. Top on our list is the Chesterfield Interceptor and the cost of relining and maintaining that service for our residents. The original request was simply, as we approached it, just to help us offset the original cost, and luckily our state and federal elected officials have agreed to take up consideration of the complete project. So that's an $11 million project. There will be a small portion match. And again, yes, you have to have shovel-ready plans before you present or ask for any federal or state monies to come to our community. We have to have a plan in place of how that goes forward. And you really don't even get to the table until at least your engineering design or your feasibility and phases plan is done. So that is something that we will continue internally while I'm here to keep developing. Ms. Young, thank you for coming. I do follow you. I see your comments. They mean something. I'd love for you to come on in and sit down. I'll offer it to you, and we can discuss whatever direction you think or what your plans are. Appreciate you coming. With that being said, There are no closed sessions tonight. I will take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Jermaine, by clerk, supported by Clerk Barry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned at 8:53.